pleading with you. If you get the evacuation order coming from local law enforcement and emergency management, take it seriously and evacuate. Your life will depend on it.
Los Angeles enfrenta atualmente uma série de incêndios devastadores, considerados os piores de sua história. O mais significativo, o Incêndio de Palisades, já consumiu mais de 17.200 acres, cerca de 6.960 hectares, resultando na destruição de milhares de estruturas e forçando a evacuação de aproximadamente 180 mil pessoas até o momento. Foram confirmadas 5 mortes relacionadas aos incêndios. As chamas, impulsionadas por ventos fortes e condições de seca extrema, avançam rapidamente, dificultando os esforços de contenção por parte dos bombeiros. A falta de água em hidrantes e a escassez de recursos agravam a situação, tornando o combate ao fogo ainda mais desafiador. Além das perdas humanas e materiais, a qualidade do ar na região deteriorou-se significativamente, levando ao fechamento de escolas e universidades.
Well, let's take a closer look, shall we, at some of the consequences. We've just heard them, but we can see them as well through satellite imagery. Here on the left, buildings on Marathon Road, Altadena. You can see the swimming pools, people's ordinary homes, ordinary lives. All of that completely changed, completely decimated, completely burned. The swimming pools there, blackened. The homes blackened, the buildings destroyed. Here on the left, we can see Fair Oaks Avenue, also in Altadena, a very similar scene. Ordinary, typical homes. Here, the satellite image obscured for the most part by the smoke, but you can see these pockets of flame that were people's houses in exactly the same place. Let's move south, shall we, to Pacific Palisades. We've talked so much about it. These are homes along Tuna Canyon. You can see the canyon above. The homes and the cars along the highway there, all of these homes completely destroyed. One, possibly two, possibly still intact. One of them, definitely, still on fire. Let's show you the ground level situation. We heard from Patricia about her home, about her neighbours' homes. She knows that many of them were destroyed. It will be scenes like this for so many people in the region. This is the coastal highway. You can see here the flames of where this building was. You can see these light areas. This is the picket fence that is also in the front of that shot. The consequences of an ongoing natural disaster. And it's not just homes, it's businesses too. This, a local branch of Chase Bank. The roof, the windows, everything gone.
Well, I'm joined now by John Valiant, journalist and author of the Baillie Gifford Prize-winning non-fiction work Fire Weather, an account of the 2016 inferno that engulfed the oil town of Fort McMurray in Canada, and an examination of our future in a more flammable world. He joins me now from Orange County, which is just south of Los Angeles. John, thanks for coming on the programme. I mean, I'm sure you heard the accounts just now, these very personal and searing accounts of absolute shock when you see your own home for many years burnt down by the flames. But at the same time, this stuff, to a different degree, happens every year, doesn't it?
Matt, it's what's shocking to me and what is really painful to see and hear is the incredulity and surprise of these people, the firefighters and the survivors alike. And they describe something as if it was the first time it happened. And it's true, it's the first time it happened to them. But the same thing happened to thousands of people in Valparaiso, Chile this spring. It happened to thousands of people in Lahaina, Hawaii, a couple of years ago, in Paradise, California, just up the highway from Los Angeles. It happened in Fort McMurray, Alberta, in the subarctic of Canada in 2016. And damage as bad as this, fires moving as quickly as this. This is unfortunately not new. It's just new to them.
And for those of us who've been lucky enough not to have had this experience ever in our lives, and you have had it, describe what it's like, the whims of these flames.
It's really like being in a blast furnace. The Santa, each region is different climatically, but global warming has supercharged the atmosphere and heated the landscape to the point that fire can move across it with an unprecedented ferocity and speed. And that is the indicator, the marker of what I call 21st century fire. It's the speed of the flames. And we saw that in shocking Technicolor, if you will, over the past couple of days in Los Angeles County, but the same thing happened in Paradise, California, and Lahaina, Hawaii, in Fort McMurray, I could go on.
The list is long and sadly gets longer every year. Now, of course, the political blame game is inevitable. Many people are pointing fingers at Donald Trump, who's about to move into the White House, saying, he is a climate change denier or skeptic, and worse will happen under him. And he's pointed the finger right back at California and the governor, Gavin Newsom, saying, you guys weren't prepared for this kind of fire. Who's right?
The cynicism of weaponizing and politicizing a global problem is, frankly, criminal. Enormous harm is going to be done by this, enormous damage. It will divide the country even further. And it is also, frankly, he's not the president yet, but it is unpresidential to speak in this way when a nation that is the fifth largest economy in the world, namely California, is in crisis. People have been killed, and it's a nation-dividing rhetoric. And there's no benefit to it. Even the parties, even the winning parties, will not benefit from it in the end, because this is a global
We're looking at
problem.
pictures now of Los Angeles, in a terrible state. I mean, is there anything that the state authorities in California could have done, should have done, that they didn't do to prevent this?
So there is, where all of us are living in a kind of a certain amount of psychological fantasy. And that is the status quo of our normal lives. And despite the fact that California is a famously flammable state, the residents of Los Angeles County who live in steep, flammable hillsides imagine that they might somehow magically be impervious to this. It's a fire-prone landscape. The LAPD is massive and experienced. The water system and the hydrant system are actually excellent. But when you're driving that much water uphill with pumps, that's when you start to lose pressure. That happened in Fort McMurray too. That's another wealthy city with good infrastructure. You cannot blame it just on the infrastructure.
But finally, John, is your message, to our viewers, and to people who read your books, that actually this is the new normal? This should not be seen as a kind of searing exception. This is the new normal.
As long as governments and the financiers and banks who enable them stay loyal to the petroleum industry, this is going to be repeating itself over and over again in more and more extreme forms. And the message here is an international one, and that is to decarbonize. And that can be a peaceful mission, and it can be a uniting mission. And that's the message from nature to all of us.
Well, let's see if it's received by the people who matter. John Valiant, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Matt. Good to be with you.
That's pretty much like a hurricane, except instead of rain, we had fire.
Ever experienced anything like that?
Not to this magnitude, and I think this would be, a lot would say that this would probably be the biggest and worst brush fire we've had in LA.
Dave Walters fought flames here for 3 days, but in the end could save only one house in this entire street. And what's becoming a familiar lament here from firefighters, the water in the hydrants just wasn't sufficient.
The only reason why we were able to save the only home on this street was because they had a pool, and we took that water pretty instantly.
The Corpus Christi Church burned out to its skeleton frame. Leave the politicians to one side. Here in California, on one thing, meteorologists, academics, police and fire department are unanimous. It is the climate crisis which has made this disaster so much worse. Specifically, the droughts, the high summer temperatures, and the failure of the autumn rains in November. That meant that when the winter winds, the Santa Ana winds came, they should have been blowing over damp ground. They were blowing over absolutely parched terrain, and this is the result.
O presidente Joe Biden declarou estado de emergência, liberando recursos federais para auxiliar no combate aos incêndios e na reconstrução das áreas afetadas. Enquanto isso, as autoridades locais continuam emitindo alertas e ordens de evacuação, enfatizando a importância de seguir as instruções para garantir a segurança de todos. A comunidade internacional acompanha com preocupação a situação em Los Angeles, oferecendo solidariedade e apoio às vítimas desta tragédia sem precedentes. Inscreva-se, compartilhe e deixe seu like. Isso ajuda para trazermos cada vez mais novidades do que está acontecendo no Brasil e no mundo.